more parents and learners are coming out with claims of racism and sexual assault at the Hoërskool Jan Viljoen. So yesterday, chaos broke out after a confrontation between a white and black learner at the school. Gauteng Education MEC Panyazali Sufi visited them, saying allegations of racism will be probed by the police and SAHRC. Our reporter Tshegohaco Moagi is at the school and spoke to one of the parents who says her child was racially abused.
My child has raised an issue which has happened 2 weeks back on Friday, where she was beaten by 2 white boys when they were from the athletes, and then he was punched, beaten with a bottle full of piss. Then she came and told me about it. When I came on Monday to address the issue with I think it's a deputy principal, he said he was going to do an investigation with the SGB. So they will do the investigation and they will call me and tell me the details of what transpired and what happened. And he took the statement from the kids. So what I've been waiting for is to find out what's going to happen with those boys who had hit my child. So the teacher called me on Wednesday, notifying me that they are still doing the investigation and Bona, they can't do anything. Everything is going to be done by ESGB. And then she told me about the other case, of the teacher. I don't know if he's a teacher or whatever he is, but Mr. Zolile, who was making some advances on her.
The Freedom Front Plus is calling for an informed response when dealing with alleged racism reports. Let's discuss this now with Freedom Front Plus chairperson, Advocate Anton Alberts, and Matakanya, General Secretary of the National Association of School Governing Bodies, on the role of SGBs. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for joining us. Let me start with you, Advocate Alberts, your assessment of the situation or the latest situation.
Yes, it's a very difficult situation, and we must ensure that we get all the facts because we have to protect our children in schools. We know that children get into fights, and sometimes these fights are just normal fights that children do get into, but they can also be indicative of something much more serious. So we have to find out exactly what has transpired. And if there is any case of racism or any other sources that creates the conflict that we've seen the last couple of days, then we must address that immediately and firmly, but in a way that protects all the children. Because to a degree, I think that the children are looking at the adults to solve these issues, to create an environment where they can go to school that is safe, that no girls are placed in a situation where there is some sexual problems, that the boys don't fight with each other over unnecessary issues, that they are taught to get along with each other. So we must be very careful in how we approach this and not make this a big issue of polarization that will polarize not only the children but end up polarizing whole school communities where the parents get upset against each other. So our point of view is that we must get the facts and then we must react to that in a very responsible way to create an environment that is safe for all the learners in the school in the end.
Mr. Alberts, what would satisfy you to be a factual, fact-finding mission, if you will? There are reports of some learners on the ground telling our reporters that, they've had their colleagues call them the K word, and it wasn't just as simple as having a disagreement as children.
Yes. Well, obviously we don't ignore those issues. What we would like to see is an investigation that picks up these issues, of course, that has transpired, that has happened, and then asks itself, but why did it happen in the first place? What is going on? Is the school doing enough to create an environment to teach children to get along with each other? Is the department itself doing enough to make sure that there's an environment where children are taught to get along with each other? And I think those are the important questions, because we cannot just leave it to the children. We are the adults, and we have a responsibility towards them. But if there are problems, and whatever form it may come, whether it is racism, whether it's sexual predatory acts, it must be, of course, taken into account and acknowledged, because those are the problems. And then we must ask, what is the source of this, and how can we address this problem so that the children can get along in the future and go on with their school education without these disruptions. That's very important.
This is not an isolated incident. We have seen this in the history of democratic South Africa. To your knowledge, at least, when we transitioned into democracy, when black learners were now going into what were at the time predominantly white schools, was there some sort of a diversity manual or training that was done for the teachers, for the school, for children, that then could be followed to date? Mr. Alberts, are you still with us?
Sorry. Could you just repeat that question again? I didn't hear that.
To your knowledge, at least, when we transitioned into democracy, in terms of schools that were predominantly white, where black children then had to come in and be integrated, was there some sort of policies that we drafted as a country in terms of diversity and dealing with diversity that we could even refer to date?
I'm not aware of any of those. I suppose there were attempts to do that sometime in the past, but I'm not exactly sure what is happening at the moment, and that's what we want to address with MEC Lesufi and with the department, to see exactly what type of training is taking place, to adequately empower the teachers and the SGB to work in a diverse environment with children coming from different backgrounds, and then how to address that with the children, how to make sure that they are also becoming sensitized to each other's cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, language, and all of those things, so that we have an understanding for each other instead of fighting. So that is definitely a prerequisite for a school, not only for schools that have diverse racial background, children from different racial backgrounds, but also for schools that could be majority black or majority white, because those children also come from different backgrounds. They might have the same skin color majority, but they differ socioeconomically. They might even differ in terms of language and culture. So that's something that should be taking place in all schools in the end of the day. And we want to inquire exactly what is going on. And that's what's so important, to do the proper investigation of what has transpired, because this can be a lesson then for all schools going forward, to see what did we miss, are there blind spots, and then to address that in a proper way going forward.
Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Advocate Anton Alberts is the Freedom Front Plus National Chairperson. Unfortunately, Mr. Matakanya could not join us for this conversation in terms of the role of SGBs. We'll no doubt try to get him as the story develops and unfolds. We understand a report will be received by the Education MEC, and he can join us at that point to discuss the role of SGBs, I guess.